Junior Mining Weekly, StockPulse.com production, where we track the action of the individual equities markets within the commodity sector. This week's show is sponsored by Amex Exploration. Amex trades as AMX.V on the venture. And as in this report, as they report near surface and high-grade gold at Grey Cat and the Gratian gold zones. We'll talk about that a little later in the show, but Amex Exploration, AMX.V on the Venture Exchange. Okay, with me is Allan Berry. Allan, let's run through this here as we usually do, but I think before we get to the companies, seems like news is a bit scarce out there, and I guess the good companies have the good news, and the ones that aren't achieving really don't. I guess it's no secret why we do follow the good ones. So why don't you kind of run through how you see this so far shaping up?
That's exactly right, Rob. I've always in my reports over the years, I've focused on quality. And as we've started to work together on various different shows, the Inside the Juniors, the commodity briefs, the various different shows we're doing, I always focus on the quality. And the reason for that is even in a time like right now where I'm looking on a daily basis through all the various news releases to see what's going on out in the business, I'm seeing a lack of news flow. And, trying to find news stories is challenging because, the funds seem to focus on a handful of companies. You look at Great Bear, they've got more money than they need. You look at Novo, they've got more money than they need. A handful of companies have more money than they need by a long shot. And then there's, the others that normally would feed into the news flow of the junior market are not, because the money is not getting distributed. It's sort of getting focused. And so that's why, I stick so closely to the quality stories out there, because we need news flow. The industry needs news flow to get people excited. And there's just a lack of the supply of news is not very strong because the money is concentrated. And then there's not a lot of great exploration projects out there. So, I think as an investor, that's another reason why people need to pay attention to what we're doing with our various shows, is because that we're filtering out, and finding those that, even if they're not in the handful of companies that are getting overfunded, at least they're getting funding, which means that the quality of the project is good on an exploration front. Otherwise, they wouldn't be getting anything, and they would be part of this crowd of juniors out there that are really just lifestyle companies doing nothing other than maybe raising a little bit of money to pay their wages and very little on the exploration front. So I guess it's me banging the drum for people to stick to quality and, watch our shows, because we're helping you to find quality.
Okay, well, let's get to some of those equities. First one on the list here we have covered before, Sokoman Minerals, Central Newfoundland. Sokoman trades as SIC on the venture. Good update on drilling and some other work being done. Run through this one.
Yeah, Sokoman is, they've got this high-grade gold discovery that I've probably been following for about a year and a half now. And why I've been following it is, one, I love high-grade gold. That's one of my things that I like to follow. But secondly, sometimes when you find these high-grade shoot systems, they're full of chutes of veins, and that, they're not always easy to figure out, Rob. Sometimes it takes several holes to find out what you've really got. And Sokoman is kind of in that category. They've had, for a year and a half now or so, they've had several runs at drilling a few holes, and they come up with really good stuff. Last assay results they reported was 6.4 meters of 17 grams. That's some good stuff. But what the market really wants to see from a high-grade system is that you can have continuity. And that's where they've kind of had some challenges. So recently they've done some serious geophysical work and structural analysis that will help them to better target down dip deeper into the system what they should be focusing on. And this company might not be the greatest at telling their story in news releases and on their website and distribution of news, but they are good at exploration. And, ultimately, I think that they've got something very serious there. They've hit high grade gold on a lot of holes in a lot of different spots on the project. But again, it's finding that continuity of the high grade. That's the question mark for these guys. I think that this time now, they're probably in the best position they've ever been in to catch that continuity. So they just announced the other day that they're getting ready to start crank up the drilling again. So this one's got a cheap valuation. The stock is trading near its lows, so I think this is a time when it might be time for folks to take a flyer on it.
Okay, next one up here. Speaking of serious, Gogold. These guys are raising some serious money. Recently, upgraded 15 million to 25 million. Talk about this one while you like it. Another Mexico gold play.
Again, it's they're getting the money for an obvious reason, but they're as far as funding of junior exploration and the allocation of capital, that's too much money for them. They don't really need that kind of money. But that's sort of an example of what's happening in the market these days. When you've got something good, and they do, you can see it in their stock chart. I mean, March of last year, a year ago, they were trading at 24 cents. Since then, the stock has basically gone from the lower left of the chart all the way up to the lower right. Recently, it made an 84-cent top. So that's a pretty big move in a year. It come off that because of this financing and stuff, but now they're oversubscribed. They're increasing it to 25 million, so they got people throwing money at them. I mean, it's a good thing that companies aren't turning down money when they got people throwing it at them. There's a reason there's an old saying in the market: when they're throwing money at you, take it. So even if they don't need that extra 10 million, they're going to get it. And the last set of assays they had out was just about not even a month ago, a few weeks ago, and they hit 5 meters at 2,381 grams of silver. I think we talked about this on a previous show. That's 2 kilograms per ton kind of numbers. So obviously they've got a really good project. You can see it in the stock price. You can see it in the fact that people are throwing money at them. And instead of paying 84 cents a couple of weeks ago, you can pay 68 cents today. So I think it's another one that has a lot of legs going forward.
Okay, next one up here, Nighthawk Gold. That trades as NHK on the big board there. Some pretty good results out. I know these guys hit the mark when they rolled this thing back, so some news from Treasure Island. Run through this one.
Yeah, they've had a combination of a couple of good news releases since they did the rollback. And I'm glad that they did that. They had a broken stock structure, and that's just going to cause you long-term problems. And so they bit the bullet. They did what they had to do, and now they got a better stock structure. And I think that will help the company moving forward. The two news releases that recently caught the attention are the Nighthawk. They drilled 12.7 meters of 8.51 grams per ton gold at their Treasure Island project. At their Calamac project, they had 85 meters of 1.86 grams per ton gold. So again, they're putting together a lot of good drill results. And now that they've restructured the stock, now they only have 44 million shares out of instead of well over 200 million shares. I think that this stock is probably much better positioned to increase in value. Right now, they're trading sort of in the middle of their 52-week range. And it won't be long now, and they'll be cranking up a lot of drilling and a lot of news flow. So definitely one to keep an eye on, because they are putting together a lot of serious drill results on their various different targets, and that doesn't just kind of when you hit 86 meters of a couple grams, that doesn't just disappear all of a sudden. I think that they're going to have strong news flow, and with a better stock structure, they could perform very well in the near term throughout this year.
Okay, moving on to one I know you cover on your newsletter, Walker River Resources, WRR. Some pretty good results in Nevada, a spot you're pretty friendly with. Why don't you run through this one?
Yeah, I do follow them well because they've been a sponsor of my website for about a year now. And why I took them on is I really like the quality of the projects they're looking at. They're looking at some very high grades. In fact, they just had news out, 13.7 meters of 96 grams of gold. You know, that's some pretty sweet looking material, Rob. They had even inside of that, they had what was it, a meter and a half of 547 grams, a meter and a half of 305 grams. So in that 13 meters, the distribution is quite impressive. It's not just sort of smearing of one, let's say 1,000 grams over a half a meter. You had inside of that, you had a meter and a half of 547, a meter and a half after that of 115 grams. Later in the hole, meter and a half, 199 grams. So, it's and some of that is being found in new zones as well. So, it's a very good exploration story. Unfortunately, I hate to say this as one of my sponsors, but they're not very good at communicating their story. They're not good at communicating it in their news releases, in their on their website, or in their digital marketing, and that's why after this spectacular news goes out, the stock is down about 3 cents after this very good news goes out. I think that they're getting heat from, I mean, I know some of their biggest shareholders, and I think they're getting heat from that group to smarten up their act. I mean, they just hired a group that they're charging $25,000 a month to do digital marketing and stuff, and I'm not seeing anything very good as far as their ability to tell their story, because personally I think it's a great story that's just not resonating out there when they're putting out great results. So, you know me, I don't pull any punches, whether they're my sponsors or they're not my sponsors. And in this case, I fell in love with the project a long time ago. I'm just not happy with the way that they're telling the story. But at the end of the day, if they get their act together on that front, I think that this valuation could be worth a lot more in the near future. So, high grade projects in Nevada, high grade projects anywhere are not that easy to find, especially in Nevada. And I hope they start doing some stuff to make the drill results resonate with a larger audience out there, because I think they definitely have the kind of project that should see a much higher valuation.
Okay, moving on. Speaking of some good drill results, one that we talk about frequently, your turnaround play of the year here, McEwen Mining, MUX. It's pretty good numbers here from Gray Fox. Run through it.
Yeah, well, we did that treasure hunting show not too long ago, and with Rob McEwen, we spent a good hour with him. He was very kind to be generous with his time, and one of the things he talked about was the potential of delivering good results at this Gray Fox, and the potential for that to help be a turnaround of their Ontario efforts. And here they delivered 6.7 meters of 52 grams per ton gold. So that's definitely the juicy kind of material you want to see. That wasn't the only intersection. They also had another deeper in the hole, 7 meters of, 7 meters of 52 grams. Earlier in the hole, they had 4 meters of 6 grams. Later in the hole, they had big, thick intersections of some handsome grades. Deep down, they had 2 meters of 11 grams. So they're definitely getting the juicy numbers that Rob was talking about, hoping to see. And part of his argument was that they've got a good team there that's been sort of reviewing and reanalyzing and trying to focus more on exploration and a little slow down some of the production so that they could focus more on the exploration. And that was sort of the formula of what made Gold Corp when Rob was running Gold Corp. He talked about how they had a strike for 3 years or something like that. And during that time, the exploration guys didn't have to worry about the mining guys wanting to take everything that they find and start processing it, and instead of letting them drill it off to show that, okay, well, this is how we should mine it. So I think that, this turnaround story it's in the making. Sometimes in turnaround stories, you're going to get in a little bit early. I think I've probably been in early twice now, but I think the bottom is in on this one, and it should start to look a lot better with more drill results and a stronger price for gold, which I'll talk about later in the show of why I think that's coming.
Okay, next one up here, one we have covered before, Dios Exploration, DOS on the venture. Some pretty interesting drill results. I know you're a fan of Jose here. Why don't you run through this one?
Yeah, Dios is run by a lady who I've known for several years because of her efforts in diamond exploration. And diamond exploration is about as hard as it gets in exploration. So if you know what you're doing in diamond exploration, sometimes this gold and base metal stuff seems a lot simpler. And she's got herself into a couple of really good plays. One is her own project that they've done a lot of surface sampling on, and they've done the structural analysis of the rocks in the area, and right where they have some of their highest grades of results on the surface sampling is where they've got the structural stories right. So they've recently done some drilling, had some good results out from that. But the other thing that's caught their romance of, like, for 1 meter of 18 grams per ton gold. So, they've got some good distribution of gold in there. So I'm really optimistic about them doing more work at that project, their AU33 project. They've also got another one that they've been working on for a couple of years that I'm quite optimistic about, called Robino. And then they've got this lately Azimuth, AZM. We've talked about them a couple times on the show. And they've recently come out with a very exceptional discovery in Quebec that's caught the attention of all the mining people in Quebec. Well, Dios has the extension of that ground, and it's in the same kind of rock package right beside Azimuth's ground. So they're going to be we're going to see a lot of news flow from Dios. Again, Dios is sort of a rock focused company and not the greatest at telling their story. Or they recently updated their website, which they probably hadn't done in 15 years. So they're kind of getting the message that in this day and age, you got to get on the ball on your website, your digital marketing. One day in the future, I would like to get Marie Josie on a junior on a undiscovered gems. A hidden gems show, because I think that she is a hidden treasure, and they could see a much bigger stock valuation if they keep going forward with their various projects, including the one near Azimuth's discovery. So, yeah, it's a cheapie, and it's sleepy, and but they've got great ground, and I think at any time they could change that sleepiness and get a much better valuation.
Okay, next one up, as mentioned at the top, our title sponsor, Amex Exploration, AMX on the venture, as they report near surface and high grade gold at Grey Cat and Gratian gold zones. Obviously, we cover this one pretty close, Al. Run through the latest news here for Amex.
Yeah, they've well, it's been a combination of things over the last couple of weeks that are looking really good. They did this drone survey we talked about on one of the past shows, where they're able to get right close to surface with these drones to run magnetic surveys, and how close you are has a very good benefit towards the resolution of your magnetic. And it's like running a big magnetic detector, or a sophisticated magnetic detector over top the ground, right? The closer you are to the ground, oftentimes in airborne surveys, you're much higher off the ground, and you can't do as tight a lines between each line of geophysics. So with these drones, they can get in there, they can do tight line spacing, they can do get real close to the surface, and they think that they've been able to spot a bunch of new targets. And I mean, their current targets are looking pretty spectacular. They've got a lot of high grade material in their drilling, and like one of the hits was 2 meters of 9.8, 50, 13 grams, 33 grams, 19 grams, 86 grams, and I'm sort of giving you top down of the hits there. So they've got a really great high grade discovery vein system. These systems go on forever to the depth. And I think that they've got a spectacular future ahead of them. And still, even at $1.50, they've only got about a 90 million valuation. And I think with some stronger prices in gold, again, we'll talk about that in a bit here, 200 to 300 million valuation this year is well within reach. So, that's quite a good performer, and I think it's one people want to have on their shopping list.
Okay, good breakdown indeed. Appreciate that. So before we move on and talk about the gold market a little bit, Al, why don't you run down latest and greatest for your project, Advanced Gold, call sign AAX on the venture. You had some news on Monday and a pretty active stock chart there. So why don't you run through maybe the stock action and then how things are progressing for you?
Yeah, well, the stock action, it's like a junior that is making some good news. Things go up, things go down. We're trying to figure out a very big system. Our 3 geophysical programs we've run so far, we've been able to establish through IP that there's a 3,200 meter by 500 meter continuous chargeability anomaly. Now, a lot of times, Rob, when people talk about geophysical anomalies, they can be patchy. You'll get a little bit here, you'll get a little bit there, then they got to try to figure it out. This is 3,200 meters of continuous chargeability. And as it goes to the south of the claim blocks, it's getting closer to surface. We think it might be right at surface. So we've got a hole we're putting in down there to test this theory, and then if that turns out to be successful, what we'll do is we'll just start walking it backwards along strike of this 3,200 meters to understand, and we'd be able to drill vertically. So things will start to pick up. Some of this ground here can be kind of chopped up, brecciated, and soft ground, so it can get challenging. But when you start poking holes vertically, it makes life a lot easier. So this current one we're doing will be at about a 70-degree angle, so it's not exactly straight down, but it's not at 60 to 65 degrees. So I'm quite optimistic about this new drill hole we're doing on the southern end of the claims, where this geophysical chargeability anomaly comes closest to surface. The other thing that we're doing is we had meetings with the tech people, the guy who runs the exploration on their San Nicolas deposit, which is about 12 miles from us. It's a sulfide system, just like what we've drilled into with one hole so far. And what they said is that he was talking about how good the gravity survey did for them and then they were speaking at the AME conference in Vancouver in January, and they were talking about San Nicolas, and they had a slide where they showed the gravity, and the gravity anomaly covers almost over 80% of the actual drilled off deposit almost perfectly. So the gravity is very good, and the reason for that is the country rock in this area is andesite, and there's a nice contrast between the gravity and of the andesites and the sulfide system, and so that's why it almost perfectly. You couldn't really be able to get more perfect of a geophysical anomaly inside of a drilled off deposit. So we're also doing gravity as we speak right now, and I'm optimistic that it will help us to target things better in this 3,200 meter anomaly. If we can see some gravity highs in there as well. So, yeah, we're doing a lot of work, because of where we are. The costs are not that expensive, and we can do a lot of great work. So we're doing it, and keep an eye on things. I think we're very close to having a major breakthrough on this project that turns us into a company that every major mining company and all investors in the space are going to hear about.
Okay, solid breakdown on the equities here. Let's talk about gold here before I let you go, Al. Looks like we're in a pretty good spot. I don't know if we get out of January alive. We're in pretty good shape and comfortable over 1550. Should be in pretty good spot to run here.
Well, yeah, gold got up to over 1550 back in September, and then it kind of consolidated, but it consolidated in a very narrow range. For example, $100 from top to bottom was your cup formation, and then coming into the new year, it had a breakout. That for one, during the day, intraday, it got over 1600, but it ended up closing at about, let's say, 1570 that day. Then it sold off a bit again, just down to that 1550, which was very bullish for me because that was the former resistance and it now became the support. It bounced off that support and just about traded up to 1600 again. Then it gave back. And this is the way markets go, Rob. They run up a couple steps, they give back a step. They run up a couple steps, they give back a step. But one of the key factors that I look for is a rising bottom. So you look at the bottom in November, it was at 1450. The next bottom was slightly above that. The next bottom was $20 above that. The next bottom was, let's say, $70 above that. The next bottom was at the former resistance, which was 1550. Now it's hit that resist. Now the new resistance seems to be about 1600, and the new bottom is just slightly above 1550. I'm talking about the nearest month's futures prices here, so it's not the spot price. But anyway, spot and that near month, first month futures contract, they always trade pretty close. So what I'm seeing is we've had a cup since September. The bottom was in November. We had the breakout of the cup in December. That showed a very strong potential for a good January effect. We got the great January effect, which tells us that the rest of the year should be good. Now, that's the story on the technical side. On the fundamental side, if you look at the reports of the major mining companies out there, gold production is in decline as we're now in a multi-year high for the price of gold. This is not a surprise to me. There's been a long period of underexploration to replace what they're mining every year. And that's the fundamental story that backs up and the demand is growing. So supply tightening, demand growing, trend is your friendly. I think we're going to have a great year in the price of gold that could see us somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000 before the end of the year. So yeah, I'm looking for big things out of the price of gold, and especially for the quality gold stocks that we follow. So it's time to get out there and start filling up your boots on these good quality stories that still have cheap valuations.
That's it for this week's show. If you're a fan of the information, please subscribe to the channel and share the broadcast. Back next week with more informative equity news debriefs, hopefully you can utilize to enhance your portfolio.